Chapter 25, Section 4 of J.B. Bury's The Student's Roman Empire, Part 2. Recording by Lenny. The Student's Roman Empire, Part 2, by John Bagnell Bury. Chapter 25, Literature from the Death of Tiberius to Trajan. Section 4. Greek Literature. The growing importance of the Jews in the Hellenic world is illustrated by the circumstances that two of the most important Greek writers of the first century A.D., whose work have come down to us, belonged to the Hebrew race. These were the historian Josephus and the philosopher Philo. We have already met Flavius Josephus in the tale of the Jewish rebellion under Nero and Vespasian. Born about 37 A.D., he belonged to a distinguished sacerdotal family, and on the mother's side to the royal house of the Maccabees. In religion he inclined to the sect of the Pharisees. He first visited Rome in 63 A.D. to defend some of his countrymen, and succeeded in his object through the influence of Poppaea. The part which he played in the last struggle of the Jews for independence has been already told. Received into favor by Vespasian, he lived henceforward at Rome and wrote his historical works there. His purpose in writing was to make the Greeks acquainted with the history and character of his own people. The best known and most interesting of his writings is the Story of the Jewish War, in 7 books, which has all the value of a contemporary witness who had taken part in it himself and been present at the most striking scenes, and a witness who, although a Jew, was able to see the Roman as well as the Jewish side of the question. He wrote this work in Hebrew, and then got it translated into Greek. His Jewish Archaeology, in 20 books, reaching from the creation to Nero, is a much larger work. The later books are very valuable for the history of the first Roman emperors, and in Book 18 occurs the earliest notice in literature of the founder of Christianity. Josephus also wrote his own autobiography, Life of Flavius Josephus, and 2 books against Appian, an Alexandrian grammarian who, on occasion of the Jewish embassy to Caligula, had attacked the Jews, and a treatise on the sovereignty of reason. Like Josephus, Philo of Alexandria also appears in political as well as in literary history. We met him as one of that embassy of Alexandrian Jews which waited on the Emperor Gaius in 39 A.D., and of which he wrote an account. As a philosopher, he was one of the earliest who attempted to combine Greek and Jewish ideas into a philosophical system. On the one hand, he makes Moses speak with the lips of Socrates; on the other, he derives the views of Plato, Heraclitus, and other Greek philosophers from Mosaic sources. He interprets the Old Testament allegorically, but his chief inspiration is drawn from Plato. In his treatment of Plato, in whose writings he finds more than Plato ever dreamed of, he is a precursor of the Neoplatonists. Plutarch was born at Chaeronea about 46 A.D. and educated at the University of Athens. Under Vespasian he visited Rome as an envoy from his native place, and seems to have won some influence at the imperial court. Trajan granted him consular rank, and directed the governor of Achaia to avail himself of his counsels. But the favor which he enjoyed at Rome did not induce him to quit his home, where he lived a happy domestic life and died at an advanced age. His attachment to Boeotia was a feature of his character. Hesiod and Pindar, as the 2 great Boeotian poets, had always a special charm for him. He seems to have occupied himself with informal teaching and lecturing, as well as with writing his historical and philosophical works. His historical work consists of the Parallel Lives, a series of 46 biographies of great Greek and Roman statesmen, grouped in pairs. In every case, except in that of the Gracchi, a Greek is compared with a Roman. This way of setting Greek and Roman history side by side was natural enough in a Greek under the Empire, recognizing the greatness of his conquerors, as well as that of his own nation. The example of such parallels had been set by Cornelius Nepos. In some cases, such as Demosthenes and Cicero, Alexander and Caesar, the comparisons are obvious; in others, such as Pyrrhus and Marius, less striking. In most cases Plutarch appends to the pair of lives a formal statement of the points of likeness and contrast. Besides these parallel lives, there are 4 single biographies of Artaxerxes, Aratus, Galba, and Otho. In compiling this historical gallery, Plutarch thought far less of finding out and relating what actually occurred than of edifying his readers and promoting virtue. He has no idea of historical criticism; he is much more at home in ethical disquisition. He loved anecdotes which point a moral. The consequence is that perhaps no ancient history has been more popular down to the present day than his Lives. His other works consist of numerous essays and treatises on various subjects, chiefly ethical, and generally grouped together under the title of Moralia. Among them may be mentioned the Platonic Questions, controversial pamphlets against the Stoics and the Epicureans, and against superstition; an attempt to explain the myth of Isis and Osiris; a large number of sermons on moral subjects, such as Virtue is Teachable, Fortune, Cheerfulness; a physical treatise on the face in the moon; a discussion of the question, Should an old man take part in public life? Literary questions are considered in The Malice of Herodotus and A Comparison of Aristophanes and Menander. His dialogue on music is very important for the history of ancient music and meter. Perhaps the most attractive of all Plutarch's works is the Symposiaca, in 9 books, containing discussions on all sorts of subjects in the form of table talk. The scene constantly changes. These symposia are sometimes at Athens, sometimes at Rome, sometimes at the author's house. As examples of the questions discussed may be mentioned the number of the Muses, the grafting of trees, the most suitable form of entertainment at table, the abstinence of Jews from pork. Another Greek essayist, contemporary with Plutarch, was Dion of Prusa in Bithynia, surnamed Chrysostomus, gold-mouthed, from his eloquence. He had come to Rome under Vespasian, but fell under suspicion with Domitian, and, banished from Italy, retired to the north shore of the Black Sea. Of the old-fashioned life at Olbia on the Borysthenes, of the enthusiasm for Homer which prevailed in that remote Greek colony, and of the dangers which constantly threatened Greek civilization in those regions from the Scythians, he has given an interesting account in his Borysthenic Discourse. Under Nerva he was recalled to Rome, and when he afterwards returned to his native town Prusa, he obtained some privileges for it by his influence with Trajan. Although Dion is counted among the Sophists, and went about as a rhetorician, it must be said to his honor that he was by no means a typical specimen. He did not, like the ordinary sophist, sacrifice thought to expression. He was a deeper thinker, inclined to stoicism, than most of his class, and he sometimes makes a hit at the vapid sophistic style. Of his discourses or essays, 79 are extant, and many of them are most interesting. In the Alexandrina he inveighs against the extravagant luxury of life in Alexandria. In the Olympica he places in the mouth of Phidias a description and explanation of that sculptor's great statue of Zeus at Olympia. In his 4 discourses on monarchy he sketches, for the benefit of Trajan, the rule of an ideal sovereign. One of the most pleasing essays is the Euboica, in which an idyllic description is given of the life of 2 rustic families in a desolate part of Euboea, and a counterpicture is drawn of life in the town. Dion aimed at writing pure Ethic. His chief models were Plato and Xenophon. End of chapter 25, section 4.